Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new episode of Ball Dominant. This show is brought to you by At the Buzzer Sports, where we talk all things basketball all the time. I am your host, John Drummond, and we have a lot of interesting topics to talk about. We're going to be spending most of this episode talking about free agency. We're also going to be talking about the New Orleans Pelicans and their recent trade for DeJounte Murray and what their ceiling will be. And we will be talking about the Atlanta Hawks and how they move on from here. I am very excited to get this episode out to you guys. Today is currently Monday, and we've got a full day of free agency, and I am very excited to talk about it. Let's get right into it. Let's go. Okay, before we get into free agency, I kind of want to talk about the New Orleans Pelicans for just a little bit. As we all know, they made a trade to send Larry Nance Jr., Dyson Daniels, a 2025 pick from the Los Angeles Lakers, and a 2027 pick from either NOLA or Milwaukee over to the Atlanta Hawks to receive DeJounte Murray. Now, there are a lot of different pieces on the New Orleans Pelicans. Some could be on the move, some could be staying. And basically, when we predicted this trade months ago, we all thought Brandon Ingram would be going to the Atlanta Hawks. We thought that the Atlanta Hawks would not be looking to concede a star without getting a star back. So they would be getting Brandon Ingram, which is a new face in Atlanta, and DeJounte Murray would go somewhere where he could better fit and play a lot better basketball. Now, we all know that's not how it went down. Brandon Ingram decides to stay in New Orleans. The New Orleans Pelicans decide to keep him, and now they can either move him for a starting center, they could sign a starting center in free agency, or they could roll with their pick that they took in this draft, Yves Missi, and roll from there. Now, when it comes to starting lineup so far, it looks like we will be getting a starting lineup of DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and whoever they decide to go with in free agency or via trade at the center position. Now, I like Yves Missi as a prospect. I think he could be a very good rim protector. He's very athletic. He could be a lob threat, but he can't space the floor. And I feel as though having a center that can space the floor next to Zion Williamson is the best option to have in 2024. I think right now, in my opinion, I know this may not be what happens. I think CJ McCollum is really liable to be a sixth man and to be somebody for the future that comes off the bench and provides a lot of scoring off the bench. Because when we have a guy like Herb Jones who made the all-defensive first team this season, I would like to see him start next to DeJounte Murray because that could be one of the better defensive backcourts in the league. Now, while I do think that the New Orleans Pelicans do have a fantastic roster, I still think there are some holes that need to be filled. One, there is a very big question up top of the roster with Zion Williamson. Will he be able to play? Will he be as productive? And will he be the number one guy to lead a team to a championship? Now, when Zion Williamson was drafted, he was drafted to a kind of lower quality basketball team, not a lower quality, but a smaller market. And being the number one pick, you are expected to be a top guy that can lead a franchise to a championship. And if we look at Zion's numbers real quick, in 3 out of his 5 seasons, he has played under 30 games. In 2019, he has played 24 games. In 2023, he has played 29 games. And the 2021-2022 season, he did not play any games at all. But when I look at his numbers, I mean, this season he averaged 23 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists on 57 shooting from the field, and the point Zion move has been really good for the Pelicans. I think if you put any core superstar around this team could be a number one seed in either conference. Guys like Giannis, Nikola Jokic, Steph Curry, Jason Tatum, Luka, SGA, Anthony Edwards, all these guys would be, if you would switch out Zion Williamson with these superstars, this Pelicans team could be a number one seed in the Western Conference. And we have seen a lot of improvement from this Pelicans team. They got a lot better on defense with Herb Jones and now bringing in DeJounte Murray. I think the offense with the shooting, bringing in CJ McCollum, bringing in Brandon Ingram, and having guys like Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, and now DeJounte Murray, this shooting is going to be very dangerous. But I'm still concerned on how Zion Williamson is going to score in the playoffs. Now, I know he had the play-in game where he dropped 40 points on one of the better defenses in the league and one of the best defenders in the league in Anthony Davis. But I think in just a play-in game, in a one-game scenario, that would work. But I think in a 7-game series where teams have a chance to adjust, there could be a way where coaches figure out, like, look, we know he wants to go downhill. If we can build a wall, just like how teams would build a wall against Giannis, it could really affect Zion's game. And that is my main concern with the Pelicans. I think they're going to be a great regular season team if they can stay healthy, because there are guys like Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, who they're consensus top 2 players who could get injured at any given moment. And it's like we've seen this with the Pelicans year in and year out. They look amazing. They look very good going into the regular season. And then somewhere at some time, somebody gets hurt. And I'm not saying that this is the player's fault, but this is how you have to look at it if you're running a franchise. And I think the Pelicans have a lot more they could do in this offseason. I think with the insurgence of Trey Murphy, that Brandon Ingram becomes more accessible to other teams now that Trey Murphy is a really good shooter, really good defender, and can make a lot of plays with the ball in his hand in the starting lineup. And I know I said earlier in my instant reaction that there are a lot of players that could do something with the ball in their hand if you are the New Orleans Pelicans, but I don't know if that is the best idea, especially when you have guys like DeJounte Murray, like CJ McCollum, like Zion Williamson, like Brandon Ingram, who all really keep the ball in their hand. There's not a lot of off-ball play. And right now, your best center on the roster is a rookie who cannot stretch the floor. This is why I think CJ McCollum should be moved to the bench and Trey Murphy should be inserted into the starting lineup and Brandon Ingram gets moved for a potential center. And I really think that every team has a weakness in some sort of fashion that can be exploited to the point where we can really not guess who's going to come out of the West, because when we look at a team like Denver, who just lost KCP, we're going to get into that later, they have a weakness now with having a short amount of perimeter defenders. KCP now takes away a lot of perimeter defense, and he takes away a lot of shooting, and he brings that over to the Orlando Magic. If we look at the Minnesota Timberwolves, they don't have really any perimeter creators outside of Anthony Edwards. Yes, they just drafted Rob Dillingham, but you do not want to put all that pressure onto a rookie. If you look at the Oklahoma City Thunder, their perimeter defense got a lot better, but there's still a lot of questions to be asked down low with Chet Holmgren. And when we look at the Los Angeles Lakers, this is a team that does not have a lot of shooting around them. There are a lot of holes in every single team when it comes to the Western Conference. So when you look at your standing, you could be like, okay, whoever has the easiest path is going to make it to the finals. This is a Western Conference to where the 7th seed can make the finals, the 6th seed, the 8th seed, the 1 seed. We do not know. We just saw this past year a 5th seed Dallas Mavericks team make it to the finals where they had a better run than the Minnesota Timberwolves would have to go against. The Minnesota Timberwolves went against a fully healthy Suns team. They did beat them in 4, and then they had to beat the defending champions in 7 games. I would argue that if the Dallas Mavericks saw the Denver Nuggets in a 7-game series, the Denver Nuggets would be heavily favored. And then we look at a team like the Los Angeles Lakers, who were the 7th seed and made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals. So just based off these past 2 playoff runs in the Western Conference, I believe that it does not matter what seed you are in the playoffs. It matters about who you are facing and at what time. As long as your number 1, Zion Williamson, is available and he is playing to the best of his ability and you have the proper team around him, I do not think Brandon Ingram is the fit for this team at all. And I think there are multiple different avenues you could take in sending a trade over there. So if I would have to give the New Orleans Pelicans a record prediction based on how they are right now, based on their team right now, I would have to give them maybe a 49 to 52 game wins, 49 to 52 wins. I think this team is going to be a top 6 seed in the West. I think that's almost locked. Just basically going off of their health. If they are fully healthy, I think this could be a 49 to 52 win team. If they're not, and let's say Zion Williamson gets hurt, I would give them maybe 45 to 46 wins. If you guys want to let me know in the comments what you guys think about the New Orleans Pelicans, make sure you drop it down below. And don't go anywhere. We have a lot more to talk about. We have to talk about the Warriors, the 76ers, the Magic, and them just signing KCP. There's a lot more to come on Ball Dominant. Stay tuned. Okay, so free agency has kind of wrapped up for the first day. I mean, we didn't really get too many big signings, just for the simple fact that I kind of knew the first day would not be as exciting as the rest of free agency and the free agency process. We have gotten 3 notable signings. We've gotten Jonas Valanciunas to the Washington Wizards. We also have Chris Paul to the San Antonio Spurs. And we have Kentavious Caldwell-Pope going to the Orlando Magic. Now, first thing I want to talk about is KCP going to the Orlando Magic. This is a guy that averages 10 points per game. He has a net rating of positive 11.3, and he shoots 41% from the three-point line. And this is the type of signing where they could have beat the Cleveland Cavaliers with KCP on their team in last year's playoffs and probably took Boston to 5 or 6 games. And I think getting that playoff experience for Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, and Paolo Banchero can be very helpful for them going into this next season. And then we have a guy like KCP who's a 2-time championship winner and was a very big piece to both of those teams. I think with KCP coming into this roster and really helping these young guys develop, Jalen Suggs and KCP already become one of the better defensive backcourts in the league. I think they could be up there with Drew Holiday and Derek White, and also now DeJounte Murray and Herb Jones. And when we look at a guy like Paolo Banchero, who averaged 27 points, 9 rebounds, had 45% from the field and 40% from three in his first playoff run, this guy definitely gives me the type of vibe that he's going to make a big jump in his third season, even bigger than he made in his second season. And the Magic could be prepared to be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. I love the fact that they still have Jonathan Isaac, they still have Anthony Black, they still have Wendell Carter Jr., and Jett Howard should be getting a lot more minutes this season. And I really think Jett Howard could get his minutes this season depending on how he plays in the Summer League. I think he has a very good jump shot, he's lengthy, and he could be a decent defender off the bench. But I guess we're just going to have to see in Summer League. Okay, the next free agency signing I'm going to be talking about is Chris Paul. I think he was signed to a 1-year, $11 million deal for the San Antonio Spurs. Obviously, this is a great pickup. CP3 is a high IQ guy. He's a very good point guard. That's why people call him the point guard. And I think he's going to be able to give Victor Wembanyama the ball. I think one of the bigger problems that Victor Wembanyama had in his rookie season was just him not getting the ball. And we talk about Chris Paul and Victor Wembanyama pairing up. I think Chris Paul could be a very good mentor to Stephon Castle, being an on-ball defender, being a real playmaker, and being a shooter as well, because we know Stephon Castle's jump shot is very inconsistent. So for the Spurs to get a veteran guard like this to really help out the young guys on this team, I think this is a very good pickup for the San Antonio Spurs. And last but not least, I'm going to be talking about Jonas Valanciunas, who was signed to the Washington Wizards, and I think the Washington Wizards needed a center. I don't know if Alex Sarr is going to be playing the 4 or the 5. Maybe the 5. I would put him at the 5 at least until Kyle Kuzma gets traded and we work on that jump shot just a little bit more. I think he has the Evan Mobley type of play to where he plays the 4 but has so much upside at the 5. And so far this offseason, I really like what the the Washington Wizards have done with signing Bub Carrington, Keyshawn George, Alex Sarr. They also brought in Jonas Valanciunas. The only thing that I can't really wrap my head around is them trading for Deni Avdija. I just think that was one of the young wings you could have pushed towards the future, especially being the defensive player and the playmaker that he is. And it's like you finally get the jump that you've been waiting for from him. You get that this season, and then you send him off. I find that very odd. And if Bub Carrington does not pan out like you wanted to, and Deni Avdija strives in Portland, you guys are going to look really suspect. So those were the multitude of signings that I wanted to talk about today that happened today. We're going to get into some things that can happen in the future and some free agents that I like on certain teams. Okay, so free agency is right around the corner, and there are a lot of interesting players depending on how much money they can get and where they could go. I think the domino is going to start falling once Paul George signs to his team. And then we have guys like DeMar DeRozan, Klay Thompson. There's a whole lot of players that could be very complimentary to the teams they go to. And the first team I want to talk about is the Golden State Warriors. I think that they took a massive L1 by lying to Klay Thompson, saying that they were not giving out a max deal, and then really holding it out for Paul George. And Steph Curry and Draymond Green gave the okay. So now, instead of trading for Paul George decides to opt out of his contract, and now the Golden State Warriors cannot sign him. And Klay Thompson decides to go out and test free agency and test what he can get. And we have seen a lot of different rumors. We have seen that LeBron James is willing to take a pay cut so the Lakers can get their full mid-level exception, which would be $13 million. And we have seen a lot of rumors of Klay Thompson going to the Dallas Mavericks. And as I'm watching this, free agent Najee Marshall has agreed to a 3-year, $27 million deal with the Dallas Mavericks. I love this pickup. I feel like Najee Harris, I'm talking about Najee Harris. That's the Pittsburgh Steelers fan in me. Najee Marshall is a great perimeter defender. I feel as though this is what the Dallas Mavericks need. And Najee Marshall is one of those low usage guys who can come in and really make key defensive plays on that side of the ball. And he's one of those guys who can set a culture on a team. I think the Dallas Mavericks could have definitely used him in the NBA Finals. But back to the Los Angeles Lakers, if they can go grab a guy like Klay Thompson, I feel as though he may not be as good as he once was, but he can still knock down shots. He can't be the number one defensive player on a team, but the Lakers still have guys like Jared Vanderbilt, like Rui Hachimura, who are decent defenders. And I wouldn't ask Klay Thompson to start immediately for the Lakers. Maybe you come off the bench at the beginning seasons or in the beginning games. Maybe you close out games with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. But I think the Lakers still have a lot more work to do. More than just signing Klay Thompson, I still feel as though guys like D'Angelo Russell and Rui Hachimura could be on the move. I still think you guys need a quality center to pair next to Anthony Davis. Whether he starts, whether he comes off the bench for certain lineups, I still feel as though you need a quality center. And I think guys like Clint Capella could be on the move. Guys like Wendell Carter Jr. could be on the move. And with Jonas Valanciunas signing to the Wizards, who was rumored to be signed by LA, I think this is a good move because I do not like Jonas Valanciunas' game pairing next to Anthony Davis. I don't think Jonas Valanciunas is a bad player at all. I just don't like his fit next to Anthony Davis. I think a guy like Clint Capella could be a lot more useful for the Los Angeles Lakers, whether they go get him in a trade. And this is a guy who is definitely on the market, so I feel like the Lakers need to pull the trigger on that. Two other guys I would love to see in LA is Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith. When we look at Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith, you literally get the best of both worlds. You get a great perimeter defender in Dorian Finney-Smith, and you get a knockdown shooter in Cam Johnson who can take some ball handling responsibilities away from LeBron James. Now I want to move on to the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, the Philadelphia 76ers have had plans to sign KCP and Paul George in free agency. Obviously, it did not work on signing KCP. I think Paul George is going to end up signing with the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, what it's important to me is them filling out the rest of the roster with some quality role players. I think you need to bring back Kelly Olynyk. I also think I said Kelly Olynyk. I feel like you need to bring back Kelly Oubre and Nicholas Batum. I also think you can bring back Tobias Harris and really lowball him, not to sound rude, but based on the performance he had in the playoffs, I don't think you should pay him as much. I also think Buddy Hield can be brought back to Philly. So let's say they have a starting lineup of Tyrese Maxey, Buddy Hield, Paul George, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid. I think that team is good enough to be the second or third seed in the East. And I saw that they brought back Andre Drummond. I like Andre Drummond as a center. I just don't know why they would sign him because they already have Paul Reed. Andre Drummond is still one of the best rebounders in the NBA, so I can understand where you come from in trying to sign him, but you already have Paul Reed. I don't know if he's on the trade block or they're just going to keep both centers. And as for the Clippers, I think this is probably going to go down as one of the worst trades in NBA history because when we look at the Clippers, they really had no success. No success. Their best moment was going to the Western Conference Finals in this tenured, and Kawhi wasn't even playing. This is a team who, in their first year together, they lost in the second round to the Denver Nuggets. Then the following year, they go to the Western Conference Finals. And then I think the following year, they miss the playoffs. The year after that, they lose in the first round, injured again. And then the following year, they lose in the first round again to the Dallas Mavericks, injured once again with no Kawhi Leonard. And it's like we have seen this Clippers team be a potential title favorite. This past season, we looked at them as a Western Conference lock. And if we look at this trade once again, the Clippers received Paul George and the Thunder received SGA, Danilo Gallinari, a 2021 first-round pick unprotected, 22 unprotected, 23 unprotected, 24 unprotected, a 26 unprotected, a 2023 and a 2025 first-round rights swapped. So when we look at a trade like that, this would mean that the Clippers were going into a championship. And I feel as though their best chance to get a championship was in 2020. There has been rumors that the Clippers did not want to be there. They felt as though that would be a Mickey Mouse ring and they did not want to get it. They were in the best position possible to go get a championship that year. They were in the best position possible, and they blew a 3-1 lead. So no matter where they wanted to be or if they did not want to be there, you still lost. You still blew a 3-1 lead at that. And there has been moments where Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, we cannot count him out as well, they just did not live up to expectation. I feel as though the Clippers had an extreme chance to beat Phoenix back in 2023. They won game one. Kawhi Leonard had like 38 points without Paul George. He turns around to get injured, and then Russell Westbrook had one of his better playoff performances in that series as well. And when it comes to the Clippers, now they re-signed Harden. It looks like Russell Westbrook is on the move. They're about to lose PG. This is a team that cannot tank. This is a team that cannot tank. You do not have any picks. And I don't think you're going to get much picks for Kawhi Leonard due to his availability. And this is possibly the worst thing that can happen for the Los Angeles Clippers because they're about to open up a new stadium. You're going to want to put butts in chairs for that new stadium, and now you guys don't have a championship contending team. Whether you have good things or bad things to say about Paul George and how he has performed in playoffs, he does have very high highs. He does have very low lows. It sucks to say, but this is not a championship contending team without Paul George. And when I talk about the Clippers, I really don't even know where they go from here. Like, you're not getting Paul George back. James Harden is a shell of himself. Kawhi Leonard can't stay on the floor. You're looking to trade Russell Westbrook. I just don't know where they go from here because you can't tank because you don't have any picks. You're in the Western Conference, which is way more competitive than the Eastern Conference. And now it's like you don't have your second star. You don't have your second star, and your best player can't stay on the court. So it's like now you guys are going to be a playing team, maybe. Maybe you make it in the top 6. Who knows? But you don't have your draft pick, so you can't really tank. So if I had to give this team, well, based on what's happening right now, there are still a lot of things that can happen in the offseason. You can still go get DeMar DeRozan or Zach LaVine. Who really knows? But I don't know. I don't know what happens with the Clippers now. Here are 4 different trades that I would love to see this offseason. Now, these aren't trades that I necessarily think will happen or I would necessarily say are the most realistic, but these are trades that I would love to see this offseason and kind of spice things up just a little bit. Now, we do have some complicated trades in here. There is a 4-team trade that I cooked up that may not be the most realistic, but I decided to have some fun. Now, the first trade I decided to cook up was Jared Allen and George Niang going to the New Orleans Pelicans for Brandon Ingram. Now, right now, I think that the Cleveland Cavaliers are kind of in a hard spot because a lot of teams in the East are going to get better this offseason, and I don't really know what the Cavaliers have next. I think with Brandon Ingram getting a new spot and a new team, he can really start fresh and be that scorer we know Brandon Ingram can be. And with the New Orleans Pelicans, I think you get another rim protector in Jared Allen who could really mentor Yves Missi. Jared Allen is a fantastic defensive player, and he could be a snub on the All-Star team this year. And honestly, I think both teams win. You can move Evan Mobley to the 5, bring Brandon Ingram into that starting 3 spot, and now you have a scorer next to Donovan Mitchell. And honestly, I think Isaac Okoro coming off the bench to be the point of attack defender really works for them. This year, Jared Allen averaged 16 points, 10.5 rebounds on 63% shooting from the field. And I think with this pickup, you will have a starting lineup of DeJounte Murray, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, and Jared Allen. I think this really only makes sure the ball that is in DeJounte Murray's hands and Zion Williamson's hands. Therefore, there are some off-ball guys like Jared Allen who could be an amazing cutter, a great roller, and a great lob threat. And then we have guys like Trey Murphy and Herb Jones who can spot up shoot from the corners or basically anywhere around the perimeter. And this makes the Pelicans one of the best defensive teams in the league if they aren't already. Like I said earlier, this Western Conference is pretty much anybody's game. Whoever has the easiest run to the finals will go to the finals. And how weak the East is, you never know. This team might win the championship. Okay, my next trade is Cam Johnson is going to the Golden State Warriors for Andrew Wiggins, a 2025 lottery-protected pick, and a 2026 top 10 pick. This may be just a little too much. You probably can only send 1 first-round pick, but the Golden State Warriors are a team that needs to get more shooting since they will be losing Klay Thompson. They're pretty much desperate since they aren't getting Paul George and they will be losing Klay Thompson. And the Nets are having a fire sale. They said personally they are willing to get bad contracts in return for picks. And I think Cam Johnson is a phenomenal player who can shoot the basketball very well and take some ball handling responsibilities away from Steph Curry if he ever needs to. And I think in a starting lineup with Draymond Green and Jonathan Kuminga, you're going to need that spacing, and that's what Cam Johnson provides. Even if he comes off the bench, I think he could be a great spot-up shooter from the wings, from the corner, to really let Jonathan Kuminga become that creator that can really attack the basket. And another trade I have, this is my 4-team trade. I read it out in my notebook. I'm going to have to actually look at it this time. It is a 4-team trade with the Bulls, Lakers, Hawks, and Clippers. The Atlanta Hawks will get Norman Powell, Bones Highland, and 2 second-round picks in 2025. The Lakers will get Clint Capella. The Bulls will get Roy Hachimura and Jackson Hayes. And the Clippers will get DeMar DeRozan and Christian Wood. Now, we all know that Paul George will not be re-signing with the Los Angeles Clippers. And being that the Clippers do not have any first-round picks in the next few years, they're going to want to contend with James Harden, with Kawhi Leonard. They just re-signed James Harden. They just extended Kawhi Leonard. They're probably going to try and trade Russell Westbrook. And why not bring in a guy like DeMar DeRozan, who I think was runner-up in Clutch Player of the Year this season? And they just lost Mason Plumlee in free agency to the Phoenix Suns, so why don't they bring in a backup center as well in Christian Wood? The Los Angeles Lakers will be getting Clint Capella, whether he starts next to Anthony Davis or comes off the bench. This is a second big body you can throw in lineups against teams like the Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets, allowing Anthony Davis to become that roamer and maybe get back to his shooting form in New Orleans. And the Lakers also keep D'Angelo Russell in this trade, so he can be on the move as well. And then for the Chicago Bulls, you really let go of somebody like DeMar DeRozan, who may want to stay in Chicago, who knows, but you also build that identity that you are trying to tank and get a better first round pick for this amazing draft that's coming up. And I know that's what a lot of Bulls fans want, to try and bring in a top guy from this draft. I know I would love to see it being from Chicago. I would love to see my city win a championship. I think bringing in DeMar DeRozan after losing Paul George is pretty much a decent consolidation prize, instead of losing Paul George for nothing and running into this season with no star next to Kawhi Leonard. And my last and final trade, I have Trae Young being traded to the San Antonio Spurs. This is a trade that pretty much everybody wants to see. Trae Young is one of the best shooters, one of the best scorers, and one of the best playmakers in the entire NBA. We've seen him in the playoffs perform to a top caliber type of player in the Eastern Conference run. Last time they were in the playoffs against the Boston Celtics, where they pushed them to 6 games, and he had that amazing game winner in Game 5. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys enjoyed another episode of the Ball Dominant Show, hosted by your very own John Drummond and brought to you guys by At the Buzzer Sports, the channel you guys are watching right now. And if you guys like what you see, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys again on Thursday. I'm out. Peace.